Help, somebody, please help me.
911, what's your emergency?
There's an alligator attacking my neighbor, Ellie Greaves. She's trapped in her pool. Please hurry.
Stay on the line. Help is on the way. Is she conscious? Is she breathing?
I don't know, she's screaming. But then she goes underwater. I see blood in the water. Please, send someone fast.
Ellie Greaves was 13 the summer it happened. And like most terrible stories, it started with something beautiful. She wasn't the kind of girl who raised her voice or made much noise at all. She never chased boys. She didn't cause trouble. Most days, she just wanted to be left alone with her books, her drawings, and the little patch of still water behind her grandparents' home in Moss Ridge, Georgia. That pond was Ellie's world. It was calm, covered in green, a place even the birds didn't talk too loud, almost forgotten by the town. And for Ellie, with divorced parents, too many therapists with polite smiles, and a voice that trembled when strangers looked her way, that pond was the only place she ever felt seen. Each morning she'd sit there, feet swinging off the edge of the dock. She'd sketch the frogs and the dragonflies, watching the ripples move like breath across the water. It was the only silence that didn't feel heavy. And then one day, she saw something new. It was just beyond the reeds, a dark shape floating low. At first, Ellie thought it was driftwood, but it blinked. Too small, glassy eyes held steady on her. It wasn't a log. It was a gator. Small, injured. His tail looked like it had been torn in half, and he barely moved. She didn't scream. She didn't back away. Instead, Ellie slowly tore the crust from her sandwich and let it drop into the water beside him. The gator blinked once, and stayed. She named him Milo later that day, because, as she told her sketchbook, he looked like someone who didn't have anywhere else to go. He's not scary, Ellie told her grandmother that night. He's just lonely. Each morning, Milo waited for her by the dock. She fed him scraps from the fridge and whispered little stories only he ever heard. Sometimes she'd lie flat on the warm boards, her fingers dancing just above the surface, and Milo would follow her hand, slow, silent, like he understood. By July, he had grown. He was longer than the dock was wide, and his eyes didn't blink as much anymore. Neighbors began to whisper, and her grandmother, peeking through the blinds, shook her head. You keep feeding that thing, Ellie, and one day, he'll think you belong to him. But Ellie just smiled. Milo knows me, she said softly. He would never hurt me. But wild animals don't love the way people wish they would. They remember, they respond, and sometimes they wait. The last time Ellie Greaves laughed was beside that pond. The next time came through the speakers at her funeral service, when no one could look up from their lap. By August, Milo's eyes had changed. He didn't blink the way he used to, didn't glide gently to the dock when Ellie called. Now he lurked, low in the water, still, watchful, only the ridges of his snout breaking the surface. Her grandfather, Calvin Greaves, had seen gators his whole life. He told stories of them sunbathing on gravel roads, of one that bit clean through a truck tire. And when he caught sight of Milo from the porch one evening, his smile faded. That ain't no pet, he muttered. That's a grown bull gator. And it's fixin' to forget who's been feed in it. But Ellie didn't listen, because she didn't see an animal when she looked at Milo. She saw the one thing in her life that never walked away. When school started back, Ellie kept visiting the pond every afternoon. She talked about her drawings, about the girl in class who called her weird, about how mom's new boyfriend smelled like engine grease. And Milo stayed close, closer than before, sometimes too close. That's when her grandmother started hiding the leftovers. He doesn't need to eat every day, Ellie. Let the thing go hungry once in a while. That's how you teach wild animals they're still wild. But Ellie would sneak him food anyway. Bits of chicken skin, old hot dogs, a half-eaten cupcake she saved from lunch. She called it their little secret. By the second week of September, Milo wasn't waiting at the dock anymore. He started drifting just below the surface near the far bank, slipping between shadows like he was thinking about something. Watching. And Ellie, she didn't mind. She just thought he was getting older. more relaxed, comfortable. But Calvin knew better. And one morning, after watching Milo creep halfway onto the mud bank near the barn cat, he grabbed his keys and left. He came back 2 hours later with a truck from Animal Control. Said they were gonna have a look at that gator. Ellie overheard the men talking. How gators that showed no fear of humans were high risk. How feeding them made them dangerous. How one girl in Louisiana had lost her arm doing the same thing Ellie was doing now. She panicked, ran to the dock, her voice trembling, calling for Milo through tears. But Milo wasn't there. The pond was still. The men searched the edge for nearly an hour, then packed up and left. That night, Ellie barely touched her dinner. She didn't cry, didn't argue. She just sat there, lips pressed tight, staring at the dark glass of the back window, as if Milo might rise from it at any moment. He's just hiding, she whispered to herself. He'll come back. He always comes back, but not everything that disappears stays gone. And sometimes, when it returns, it isn't the same. It was a Sunday when Ellie went back to the pond. No one knew she was out there. Her grandmother thought she was upstairs drawing. Her grandfather had dozed off during a Braves game rerun. And Ellie, she had waited 3 whole days for Milo to come back. That morning, she packed a small plastic bag with roast chicken from the fridge. She tucked her sketchbook under her arm and slipped through the screen door without a sound. The air was thick with heat that day, the kind that clings to your skin and presses behind your eyes. The pond didn't shimmer the way it used to. The water just sat there, heavy and still, as if something beneath it had forgotten how to move. She sat on the dock with her legs crossed beneath her, like she always did. She opened her sketchbook to a fresh page, pressed the corner flat with her palm, and called out softly, "Milo? Are you still here?" Silence. Not even a ripple. Ellie tossed a strip of roast chicken into the water. Just a hopeful little gesture from a lonely girl trying to believe in something. Stillness. The water sighed. A soft ripple fanned out. The reeds stirred like they'd been holding their breath. A shape appeared. Low. Smooth. Familiar. A snout. 2 glassy eyes. A shadow with memory behind it. Her heart lifted. She scrambled to the edge of the dock, knees brushing the warm wood as she leaned closer. Her voice cracked with a smile as she whispered his name again, like saying it might make it more real. For one perfect second, it felt like everything broken in her life had been waiting for this moment to heal. He was here. He came back. All those mornings, all those hours, they had meant something. Ellie's grin broke open wide as tears rushed up. She laughed, a laugh so pure it hurt your throat just to hear it. "I knew you'd come back," she whispered. "I missed you so much." She didn't see how Milo's eyes stayed locked, didn't notice the way his tail never moved, didn't question the stillness behind those glassy black pupils, because this was the happiest she had been all summer. Milo rose, slowly, quietly, as if the pond itself was offering him back. The dock groaned, not from weight, but warning. Ellie barely had time to blink. The boards beneath her feet cracked like gunfire. Milo lunged, not like a friend, not like someone who remembered the crusts and the whispers and the drawings, but like a storm that had waited long enough. His jaws latched onto her ribs and pulled. Hard. She vanished in a blink, gone before the splash could even settle. The pond thrashed. Wood shattered. Blood bubbled to the surface. The violence stopped as suddenly as it had started. By the time her grandmother noticed the screen door was ajar, by the time her name was called down the empty hallway, by the time they reached the edge of the dock, there was only a sketchbook, a page half finished, a plastic bag floating face up, and the slow drift of pencil lines bleeding off the paper like veins in the water. That night, the sheriff's team dredged the pond with floodlights and dragging chains. They recovered what they could, what little Milo had left behind. Neighbors wept. Reporters came. And for a brief moment, the whole state of Georgia seemed to hold its breath. But Milo wasn't caught. The traps didn't work. The pond stayed still. The shadow never returned. Weeks passed, then months. And in the fall, a new family moved into the house by the water. Their daughter, 10, maybe 11, liked to sit at the edge of the dock with her feet in the water. Sometimes she brought her sketchbook. Sometimes, when the wind was still, she swore she saw something watching. A low shape lingered just beyond the reeds, silent, still, like the water had remembered her name and whispered it back in the form of something ancient. They say alligators don't form attachments, but some creatures remember patterns, smells, places where the world once felt soft. When you feed the wild something tender, it doesn't forget. It learns to wait, to stalk, to trust routine over reason. Milo didn't return because he missed Ellie. He returned because Ellie once taught him where the warmth was. And next time, he'll be ready faster. So tell your children, tell your grandchildren, not just about danger, but about illusion, about the difference between connection and control, about what happens when we mistake silence for safety and hunger for affection. Because Ellie Greaves wasn't foolish. She was kind, and the world never taught her that kindness alone isn't enough. Her story shouldn't end with fear. It should end with understanding. So share this story, not for views, not for shock, but because somewhere out there, another child is leaning over the water, sketchbook in hand. And they need to know, if you have children, tell them this story. Not to scare them, but so they understand what love can't fix, and what nature never forgets. Love is a human word, but nature only remembers hunger.